love the shorts and love the concept of trying to give the average person a glimpse into this beast of what is, I guess, the free market economy. Mm-hmm. There are, tidbits that you can handle. From your perspective, how do you think the audience will be able to handle it? Do you think it's enough for them to give them a general idea to go pursue more?
I think that's a good question, because it's the way Adam and I kind of came into it, because you could almost treat me like the audience, and because there are such heavy sort of concepts, phrases and numbers that are, and I have a degree in finance, but this is a long time ago, and I can barely balance my checkbook, but I do have a little bit of knowledge of what's going on, but to sit down with Adam, which was a good test, because he would have these theories and descriptions and tell you what's going on, and you have to digest it, but then you just turn around and put it into something like a different, like I go, oh, I can see that in a wrestling piece or something like how can I take this information, distill it down to stuff that I think everybody can handle and has an appetite for, and enough to get a reaction of either anger, hopefully not just anger, but enthusiasm to go learn, something to go out and find out more about it. So that's, I think, how we kind of... Yeah. And we had dinner, and I think having sitting down at dinner, we could have almost filmed the dinner, and that would have been rather, could have been interesting.
Oh, no.
But,
yeah, because I remember when I didn't know anything about economics, but now I've been, and I remember being struggling with it and finding it confusing, but now I've been covering it so long, I have this other danger, which is I kind of forget how to talk to people who aren't necessarily expert. And I found this working with Chris was so thrilling for me, because I mean, normally what I do is stories for NPR or the New York Times, where you're able to assume some degree of an informed audience, although we try and make it accessible to a broad audience. But it's fairly, sober, somewhat, serious. And I would guess it is a lot of what I do. I wish it wasn't, but I would guess it is pretty off-putting to people. And it was it was just stretching my brain so much to think about how do we make this for a broad audience, how do we make it fun, exciting, engaging. So the wrestling concept and the way Chris, I feel like what Chris would write a draft, and then I'd make it into a textbook of economic theory, and then
I'd have to open up my computer and get Wikipedia out, and it's like, I gotta look at it. And which is what I think we want other people to do, is kind of get this curiosity to go, oh, so here's some information about GDP. There's a very silly way to look at it, but here's some information, and not even burden people with facts, but just definitions, and kind of how you can look at, how you should, just to look at things a different way, and maybe go home, turn on your computer, hit Wikipedia, and start looking like, oh, this is how this country does it, this is how other things are valued, and this is how, quality of life should be measured, and so it's all stuff that Adam brought, is like, hey, here's, it's the world that, at my age, and as we all grow older, that, and it's a discussion that we don't have enough of, hey, here's another way to look at it. So
yeah, and I don't imagine anyone will see this series and be like, "Oh, fabulous! I'm now ready to be Treasury Secretary." I'm now, but I think what it does do, which I find very exciting, is it just it very much communicates to the public, hey, this topic is actually really fascinating, and there's huge battles going on intellectually. The stakes are very high, and hopefully it gives you enough to feel like, okay, I can begin to appreciate this and then dig deeper.
And that is the thing that is, you spend time on, your day, and you're like watching football and baseball, and you see these battles, but you don't realize that there are battles. These battles are going on that directly impact your life, and it's what you hear in the news that's presented to you, and you go, oh, I guess that's a good thing. And then you realize, oh, wait a minute, this was decided by people who, were not thinking of me, and were thinking of corporations, or, and by the way, think of corporations. We should have a competitive world, but it's when it takes over and it's more important than the people is what I think is something that you start to realize when you start questioning these things.
One of the things I liked about it, and I was curious if this was your intention, that you
Yes.
had, all right, I got it. You had the two wrestlers, enormous guys, and it's like you're putting the two enormous concepts together and they're clashing. And then you bring out the economists later, and it's that colossal idea of ideas clashing. Is that kind of what you wanted the whole wrestler impression?
I think that's great. You thought that. I don't think I put that. I figured that out. But I just there is the idea of the salesmanship and showmanship that wrestlers have to get colossal ideas out and to in that audience, and who you would love to hear that in an arena of 50,000 people screaming and a guy yelling about
Economy.
Because this was an actual battle. I mean, what we described in the two economists we mentioned, Simon Kuznets and Meehan, were real people who really did have this battle. But the way it was actually fought was like in policy memos and statistical abstracts, and it very slowly over 15 years. And so for me that was so, because if I was going to do it just in my day job, I would have done it very literally and said, well, Simon Kuznets believed this and Meehan believed that, and there was this long blah 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 blah. But there's very little, like, even though there's drama there, there's no moment, like there's not a scene you could shoot that would be dramatic. It would just be like two middle-aged guys like.
But it's interesting. So when was this? This was like in the 30s, right?
Yeah, 30s.
So the fact that a definition back then, was made and for GDP, and it hasn't really changed, and it's something that we have so many other factors in our lives and beyond the health of a corporation, but. That should be encouraged, or we should encourage people to look at. And I think, which is, it's that world of, whoever gets to write history, whoever prints the history books gets to write history.
Because I like the concept of the economist, because it reminded me of like the battle today, Keynesian economics versus
Right.
Milton Friedman, and I love that clashing, and to have the concept that hey, there's a potentially of one actually winning out, like right now Keynesian is dominant. I like that. It was that kind of your intention of he won, and
Yeah. Although the process, which was very exciting for me, was so I just told them the actual thing that happened, and I walked them through the kind of policy disputes, but it was, Chris who was able to bring this, like, well, let's just think about it around, wrestlers. Here's how the wrestlers will. And so for me, that was very, like, I don't get to use that part.
It was also make it something that, this, Meehan won that day. And it's just like, here's like, make your own, it's still, at the end of it, I want people to see it and then make their own opinion. If they believe like, we should just stick with corporations and determine how this country's doing based on the health of like 3 or 4 factors, and then so be it. But understand the consequences.
Yeah. Great. Thank you guys.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.